Hello, I'm Jessica with Stay Cozy Creative Co. and welcome to another Freebie Friday. So today's Freebie Friday is going to be a little bit different than my last ones because instead of being a full project, I'm just going to show you how to do some hand crochet stitches. So this week I worked on a jumbo llama, if you saw it, and I actually took a traditional crochet pattern and then transferred it to hand crochet and used a bigger yarn to make a jumbo sized llama. So you can find that video on my channel. But I thought that it might be helpful to show you the difference between some of the stitches so you can see what it looks like in hand crochet form with chenille yarn. So that's what I'm going to show you today, show you a few different ways to start projects and also how to do stitches and what that looks like and how the outcome is different. So I hope it's helpful as you're on your hand crochet journey. Today I'll be using our Stay Cozy chenille yarn in colors lilac and dark gray, and you can find these on my website at staycozyco.com. And before we get started, I'm just going to make a quick list of some common crochet basic stitches that you may run into when you're doing patterns or creating your own designs. So a chain is very common. A magic circle is another way to start a project. Single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, triple crochet, binding off, and increasing. So these are all the things that I'm going to show you today, and let's get started. We're going to start with a simple chain stitch, and this can be used to start a project or also within a project. So we're going to start with a slip knot, and with chenille yarn you want your loops to be about 2 inches wide, just big enough for your fingers to fit through. And then we're going to reach into that loop and pull a new loop through. And here we have our chain, and I'll show you how we count our stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 loops in this chain. And now I'm going to show you a magic circle. So this is a completely different way to start a project, and a magic circle is usually used for something that needs to be round at the beginning. So we're going to wrap the yarn around our fingers and then make a slip knot here to hold that circle in place. And then we're going to do single crochet stitches into the center of that circle. So we have 1 loop on our fingers. We're going to reach into the center of that circle, pull a new loop through. So now we have 2 strands on our fingers, and then we're going to pull a new loop through both of those strands. And that's 1 single crochet stitch. So I'll show you again. We reach through the center, pull our second strand through, and then pull a new loop through both of those strands, and that's another single crochet stitch. So I'm going to continue around in this way, just showing you how it works and how it creates a circle. And then as you go, you just pull on the tail of that yarn to tighten up the center. And so it's really helpful when you need a circle that doesn't have a hole in the center. This is a really kind of simple way, even though it can be a little complicated to get used to because there's a lot of loops and things to be hanging on to. It can be really helpful when starting a project. You can also make a magic circle with a double crochet stitch or a half double crochet stitch or a triple crochet stitch. So it doesn't always have to be a single crochet stitch, but the main thing is that you're working around in that circle. So here I'm showing you my different stitches and I've completed my circle. Now I'm going to show you how to do the same single crochet stitch but into a chain. So you can either use this last loop of your chain to make your first stitch, or sometimes a pattern will tell you to chain 1, which is what I'm going to do here to make a new loop, and then that is the first strand of my stitch, and then I'm going to go into the loop next to the one that loop is coming out of, pull a new loop up and through, so I have my 2 strands, and then pull a new loop through both of those, and that's my first single crochet stitch. Now I'm going to go into the top part of that next loop to make my next stitch, and then you're going to continue in this way all the way across the top part of the chain. Now we have completed a row of our single crochet stitches. So I'm going to work back the other way, and I'm going to show you two different ways. You can either use your left hand now to work your way back across, or if it's more comfortable to use your right hand, you can turn your project around. So I'm going to chain one here, and now I'm going to show you how to do a double crochet stitch. So you're going to wrap a second loop around your fingers, and then you're going to go into that loop that's next to where you already are, pull a third strand through, and then you're going to pull a new loop through two of those loops and then through the other two. So I know this is kind of complicated, but you have the one strand, you're going to wrap a second strand around, then you're going to go into the next loop on your chain, pull a third strand through, and then now you're going to take a new loop and pull it through only two of the strands. So then you have two on your fingers and then pull through those two. So that's a double crochet stitch. And I'm going to keep doing double crochet stitches across the rest of this row. And a good way to kind of remember a double crochet stitch is that you start with two strands on your finger and then you do the stitch twice. So you're going to start with 1, 2 strands, then go into your next hole, pull a new loop through, and then you're going to pull under 2 strands and then 2 strands again. So a double. And then here I realized that I accidentally almost was doing a single crochet stitch, so I'm going to try that again and make sure that it's a double. If you're new to hand crochet or crochet in general, just give yourself some time and grace as you're learning, because it definitely can take a little bit of time and a lot of practice to figure out how everything looks. You can see a little bit of difference in that single crochet stitch and then the double, how there's kind of like 2 actual strands there, so you can see the difference. And here I'm going to show you how to do a double crochet stitch into the magic circle. Often with crochet, people go through both strands of a loop, but I usually just go through this back side of the stitch. And that's just because that's the way that I learned. And also, since this yarn is so chunky, I just find that you're able to do it that way. But if you're more comfortable, or if your pattern calls for going under both strands, you can do these same stitches in the same way. So I'm just showing you going through the back side of the stitch. So here I'm doing the double crochet stitch in the same exact way that I did on the chain, except for I'm working in the round. And I'm going to show you here how you do an increase. So you basically do another stitch into the same hole that you just did your former stitch. So I'm going to do another double crochet stitch into that same stitch that I just used. So that's an increase where you double the amount of stitches into a last stitch. So here I'm going to move on then to the next loop, make my double crochet stitch here, and I am not going to increase in this one. So you can see the difference where I just did the one stitch into that loop, and then in this next loop I'm going to increase again. So that means I'll do my double crochet stitch this first time, and then into that same stitch a second time. So that's an increase. A pattern may call for one stitch to increase in a row, or it could call for every stitch to increase in a row. So you just have to pay attention to the pattern. And now I'm going to show you a triple crochet stitch. So you see I'm starting with 3 strands on my fingers, pull a 4th strand through, and then pull a new loop through 2 of those strands, a new loop through 2 other strands, and then a new loop through the last 2 strands. So I'll show you again where you start with 3 strands on your fingers, go into that next stitch, pull a new loop through, so we have 4 strands on your fingers, and then pull a new loop through 2 strands, and then 2 strands again, and then 2 strands again. So you can use the same kind of reminder that we did with the double crochet for the triple crochet. So for the triple one, you start with 3 strands on your fingers, and then you make the stitch 3 times. And now I'm going to show you a triple crochet on this chain. So I'm going to chain 1, just like I've been doing, and then I'm going to start with 3 strands on my fingers, reach into that next stitch, pull a loop up, so I have 4, and then pull a new loop through the first 2 strands, and then the next 2 strands, and then the final 2 strands. So that is a triple crochet stitch. And I will continue in this way all the way across the chain so you can see how it looks. Here I have the 4 strands on my fingers. I'll pull a new loop up and through, a new loop up and through, and a new loop up and through. So that's another completed triple crochet stitch. So you can see the difference here of the sizing of the stitches. The single crochet stitch is short, the double crochet stitch is a little bit bigger, and then the triple crochet stitch is a lot taller. So depending on the pattern that you're using, or if you're making your own design, this is a way that you can change the sizing of your design just by simply using a different stitch. Now that I'm done with my row of triple crochet stitches, I'm going to show you what a half double crochet stitch looks like. So I'm going to start my new row by chaining 1, like I've been doing each time. And you're going to start with 2 strands on your fingers, just like you do for a double crochet stitch. Reach into that next stitch, pull a 3rd strand through, but you're going to pull your new loop through all 3 of those strands. So it's basically a half double because we're going to start with 2 strands, just like you do for a double. Reach into that next stitch, pull a 3rd strand through, just like you do with a double. But instead of doing 2 stitches, you're just going to do 1 by pulling that loop all the way through all 3 strands. So you're basically doing half of a double crochet stitch. I'm going to complete this row with half double crochets so you can see what it looks like and keep getting practice on how to do it. And you can see once we get to the end how the look is a little bit different. So that row of our second crochets kind of has like 2 strands right on top of the other, and this one has like more of a braided look to it. And now that we've finished our row of half double crochet stitches, I'm going to show you what it looks like to do a half double crochet in the round. So we finished off with a triple crochet stitch, which is really tall, and then now we're going to do our half double, which is really short. So we're going to make a sharp kind of decrease in the size of our stitch, but you're going to start with 1 strand, add a 2nd strand, go into that next stitch, pull your 3rd strand through, and then go through all 3 of those strands. And that's a half double crochet stitch in the round. So you can see that this kind of has made like a shell shape. So working in the round is a really fun way to make 3D shapes and objects versus the chain where it made it very straight and more of a flat object. For our final stitch, I'm going to show you how to do a binding off stitch. So you're just going to lay the strand that you have on your fingers down on top of the stitch next to it, and then pull a new loop up and through both of those strands. So you're just taking that strand, laying it down on top of the next one, and then pulling a new loop up and through both of them. And in this way, you're connecting that final strand to your final row so that you don't have any loose ends. So I'm just going to work my way all the way around like this, and you can see how it kind of cinches up the end. And if you wanted the top to be completely closed up, then you could cut your yarn and weave in the ends and pull it tight, and it would close that circle up. So here I'm going to show you the binding off stitch across the chain. So you just have the 1 strand, put it over the one next to it, and pull a new loop up and through. So in this way, we're doing the same thing by connecting that final strand with our final row. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial. So I hope that it was helpful showing you each of these stitches, and I think it's so fun to see these side by side because we used the same kind of stitches in each one, but the size and shape and just the overall look are completely different. So let's check off everything: a chain, magic circle, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, triple crochet, binding off, and we also did increasing. So I'll add that to the list and check it off. If you like this video, please like and share it. You can also subscribe to my channel for more videos. And until next time, stay cozy, creative, and kind.